get ready for our next guest coming up. Just got to pull up my sheet here. I see him backstage, Robert Beasley. He is CEO at Cansortium, and the ticker is CNTMF. How you doing today, Robert?
Hi, good. Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, it's afternoon.
Just past morning, anyway.
There you go. I mean, you could be in Central. Who knows? I see your slides. It says Fluent Cannabis Care. I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you. We are, the company is Cansortium, and the tickers are indicated on the lower slide there. And we do business under the trade name Fluent Cannabis Care. We speak cannabis being the slogan at Fluent. The image here in the background, just for reference, is our Tampa facility. You see it faded there. It is a 23,000 square foot facility, and it's a 6-high vertical grow of cannabis. We are currently in 4 major markets, Florida being the largest of those. In Florida, we have 27 current dispensaries open. We have 2 packaging and processing centers with cultivation attachments and 1 cultivation center operational at this time. We anticipate opening another 4 to 6 stores in 2022. We're citing those stores now. Florida still remains a very rapidly growing and now a little bit more competitive state, but plenty of opportunities still in Florida for growth. We are also one of 3 Texas license holders, and I'll talk to you more about that. We operate in Pennsylvania on a retail format. We have 2 dispensaries open, and 1 being the Anvil location is under construction. We hope to have it open in first quarter of 22. And in Michigan, we are a cultivator and wholesaler working out of a cultivation space there in Bangor, Michigan. We've had a tremendous year. We have a 73% growth of our EBITDA. You can see adjusted EBITDA there in 2020 was 10.3, growing up to 17.8 at this point. Total revenue is also experiencing growth. We're 52.4 compared to 61.8 as of Q3 of 2021. And adjusted profit is growing as well. So it's been a good year for Fluent. This is recognition of the investments we have made in our cultivation and packaging and processing portions of the Florida market. Has really been the driver of most of this growth. As I said, in Florida, we have the 27 stores. Our headquarters are in Miami. Then we have the 3 grow facilities. We have a grow facility in Tampa that includes our lab and our distribution center. We in Sweetwater, which is kind of in the middle of the state, about an hour and a half from Tampa, we have a grow facility as well as the packaging facility. And then down in Homestead, we have a cultivation operation. We have pretty good map coverage in our A markets. We're now starting to develop out some of the B markets. And with the new stores, you see the new stores coming identified. Run through of the processing centers and cultivation centers. Tampa has 22,000 square foot of cultivation. We have 7,000 square foot of packaging and processing and administrative space. That's about 20,000 square foot of cultivation. And there's a shot again of that cultivation center. It's a 6-high vertical, so it's a fairly aggressive vertical format. We are in the middle of constructing and near end of constructing the adjacent space, which is about 20,000 square foot. And of that, about 5,000 will be additional flowering canopy space. Out in Sweetwater, we have about 26,000 square foot of cultivation, production and administrative space. And about 15 of that is flowering canopy space spread over 11 distinct grow rooms. And those grow rooms are between 1,400 and 1,500 square foot. Small batch environment type concept there. 1 or 2, maybe 3 strains per room. The environmentals are controlled in a very finite scenario. And the purpose of that facility is to drive out very high quality flower, allowing those micro batch environments to allow the genetics to reach their highest potential. We recently completed building another 40,000 square foot greenhouse out back, and harvests are now in full production out of that greenhouse starting in November of 2021. And then finally, we have the Homestead greenhouse facility, another 43,000 square foot of greenhouse. The facility was in turnkey condition when we began. We've now started harvest in November of 21. In Pennsylvania, it's a tremendous market. The increase in patient count continues to grow steadily. Competition is somewhat limited due to the regulatory environment. There's 50 permits across the state. They're divided into regions. We hold 3 of the locations in the Southeast region, and they have a maximum of number of permits of 15 per owner. These regulations and restrictions allow the market to remain controlled and grow in a robust manner. We have 2 dispensaries open. We have had our Hanover facility open, and the picture here is of our Mechanicsburg facility, which is now open and continues to grow. Again, I mentioned we have our Annville store that should open about end of February, March of 2022. In Michigan, we hold the Class C medical cultivation licenses and 2 Class C adult licenses. This allows for about 5,500 plants. We're growing in an outdoor environment on about 8.5 acres, and we have about 4 acres of it being utilized, and then a support building of about 3,500 square foot of packaging and drying. In Q3 2021, we actually sold the remainder of our 2020 crop, which was about 2,600 pounds of biomass and 900 pounds of flour. We are now harvesting and drying. We have about 5,400 plants that have been harvested, and we are production volume-wise about double what we were last year as far as weight, and getting some really strong flower ranges from 14 up to 25%. It was a great growing season in Michigan. The harvest looks really good, really healthy plants, really strong weights and yields. Waiting to see what the market does and see if the Michigan market has stabilized a bit more from last year. Texas, we're one of 3 vertical license holders. We are, one of the first movers there. The market dynamic in Texas is like Florida was in 2016. We have about 8,000 patients now at this point, which is an uptick from the 5,000 that it was at for some time. This uptick occurred after the legislation was recently passed. We did not get everything we asked for in the legislation process. We were hoping for a 10% THC level. We were now at 1%, although the patient qualifying conditions was expanded dramatically. We're currently located in Schulenburg, Texas, with the right to expand up to 400,000 square foot. We're only growing at about 1,300, 1,500 square foot at this time. The goal in Texas will be to grow our own patients. Similar to market in Florida, it's an awareness campaign. We have to get out there and make those patients aware of the conditions, aware of the medicine and what it can do for them, and grow kind of our own patient base. And we're looking forward to doing that. DPES, the regulating entity in Texas, is very supportive. They've been a good cooperative partner as far as doing the most they can with the legislation that they've been provided. And we're looking and participating into their rulemaking right this minute. We hope that those rules become final in probably the first part of the year. And those rules allow us to expand in this market building campaign that we're hoping to start. So again, revenue has been dramatically increased, 84% year over year from 2019 to 2020, and then another 20 to 26% from 2020 to 21. We anticipate that trend to continue into 22 with is probably another 20-30% increase in revenues due to our expanding capacity. There will be some market compression in Florida due to the competitors coming on. But again, there's plenty of demand, and we expect to continue to grow top-line revenue. We're also continue to grow our EBITDA. We went from a 10.3 positive in 20 to about an 18 to 26%, depending on how the year shakes out. That's a 75 to 150% increase year over year. This year in 21, we did a refinance that allows us to get rid of some of that initial legacy debt. This company is an older MSO, meaning that it had to borrow money back in the days when money wasn't available for cannabis. And as money becomes more freely available, the U.S. markets now have started to engage. And the offices, family offices and brokerage houses in the U.S. are now fully engaged and interested in cannabis. Capital becomes cheaper and more available. This allows us to continue to grow. We have the 6th largest footprint in Florida. And Florida is one of the country's largest and fastest growing market. Again, we invested almost $20 million in Texas and in Florida and Pennsylvania, and now our next plan and target market is to start investing in Texas and to build that market share. As I said, we speak cannabis, and we look forward to continuing to interact with our shareholders. We have a robust and very cooperative shareholder group. I enjoy the interaction with them and their thoughts and incentives on how we can move forward at Fluent.
Really good stuff, Robert. Thanks for that. We have some time for some questions, if you're cool with that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So I had a couple questions myself about the Texas market. I don't know why, but you said that it was, a spot for opportunity. So I was kind of targeting there. So can you maybe consider, you were hinting that Florida maybe will look a little similar to Texas. Can you give us any forecast maybe on like a timeline for Texas, maybe given how it's gone in Florida?
Yeah, and we expect Texas to kind of follow the Florida pathway. There are a couple differences, though, that could be significant. First of all, the Texas legislature meets every 2 years versus every 1 year, which means that this year the result is what we have, and we'll have to work with that for the next 2 years without any prospect of expansion. Again, DPS, giving the legislation they were dealt, they are actively working on expanding their regulations and invoking regulations that put that implement that legislation. They are a supportive partner in these states. The regulatory tone that you deal with matters quite a bit. And in this case, there's only 3 of us. DPS keeps constant contact. They have the motivation to make us as successful as possible and to give us the tools to do so. And they're good listeners. They often take input from the MSOs that are working in other states to say, this would work and it's consistent with your legislative scheme. To answer your question on timing, I think we're 3 years. We need to develop out the market share opportunity that the recent legislation has allowed us. Now we have something to sell. We were low THC. We were no THC before. There is a CBD market, but it's a challenge. Now we have the opportunity at a 1% derivative rate to put products on the shelves that people are interested in. We still have a little bit of a unequal scenario when you've got conditions that are allowed now, but we don't actually have the dosage and the product formulations to adequately treat those conditions. That is a challenge. We're going to continue to work with that. But right now, it's all about patient awareness. With 8,000 patients in a state the size of Texas, you can see the word's just not out. There's just not the education on the ground right now to bring people to this market. That was exactly the way it was in Florida, 2016. Gotcha. There was very low or if not, slow physician buy-in in Florida. There was very low and slow patient buy-in. And we're talking about, medical patients. Florida still remains a medical state, and our customers still remain primarily medical users. And so that's what we're going to target in Texas. That really influences the type of products you're putting out there. You want to be heavy into creams and other pain relieving and inflammation relieving products because that's the medical driving need. You will not see as much of a recreational slant towards our product offerings in Texas because we're trying to get those patients an alternative to the mechanisms they're using currently.
Certainly. And then, so you hinted at it a little bit earlier, but I wanted a couple of details, if you don't mind. How would you grow your own patient base in Texas? Like what's a step or two into that?
So you start by having awareness days. You start by going and collecting. Now with COVID, hopefully on the decline and being controlled by the vaccines, we can start putting people together again. Typically in Florida, what we did was we'd rent out hotel ballrooms and so forth and put on a presentation of medical cannabis. And people come, they're very interested and start talking about the anecdotal stories and evidence of how it could help their conditions. Answer their questions. That is both patient questions and physician questions. It's, not thought of too often, but the endocannabinoid system wasn't taught in medical school until the late 90s. And so even physicians have questions about how can I use this to benefit my patients as a medicine? And so we've got to get those questions answered. We've got to get people comfortable with cannabis as a medicine.
Gotcha. And then one more question here, and then you're going to be hanging out with us for a minute here, Robert. We have a panel coming up, and you're on the panel, right?
Correct.
Awesome. I'm excited for it. So a question from our audience was about the capital raise last week. What was the need to do it in management's eyes?
So we're reaching the end of deploying all of the capital and loan funds that we raised in May of 21. The May of 21 raise did two things for us. We restructured our debts, got away from some of that legacy debt, and got into a supportive lender group. And we borrowed money at the rates that were available at the time. Quite frankly, the rates are better now. There's
Absolutely.
cheaper money out there.
No
we are in negotiations with our lenders to restructure those loan facilities. We needed the capital raise for a couple things. One, to show how much interest there is in investing in the sector. It took nothing for us to reach out to one of the many investors that want to be investors, that want to get in and say, hey, we need a small raise. We want to use this to negotiate with our lenders to pay down and delever a bit, and to be part of those negotiations, and change the leverage ratios that were under the credit facilities. Very enthusiastic support. Took no time at all to raise a couple $1 million. And then we were able to bring that in and bring that to the table in those negotiations. So that's primarily the purpose. Sure. It was not a large enough raise for it to be useful capital for us to build another project or do some of the things we talked about. But certainly it was large enough to pick up our bottom line and use that fund to give the lenders more tools in our discussions.
Love to hear it. And that's what, this event about is investors asking questions. And here's an exec with a great response. So really appreciate you answering that one, Robert.